Hello and welcome to Climate Matters. I'm your host, Lynn Shad, and today we're here with Jack Richardson, one of our newest members to the Falmouth Select Board, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation on your perspectives on climate and our community.
Thank you. Likewise.
So, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you here. So, Jack, when did climate first start to matter to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm of the generation where I've seen, and my peers have just seen natural disasters get worse and worse throughout the years. I remember I used to go to the beach. My grandma, she lived on Davisville Road, and we go to the beach at the end there, and that beach is essentially gone now through erosion and our sea rise. So I think that was the first where I kind of realized what it was, and then also, I was one of the last classes to go to the Cape Cod National Seashore in Truro.
What do you mean one of the last classes?
In fifth grade,
they did like a field trip?
So you would go out for a few days.
Okay. Oh.
That program's been discontinued because that building's going to fall in the water. So, I've seen the real examples of things that have happened in my life that just aren't happening or won't happen anymore. And also, in the age of social media, there's a huge natural disaster happening in Alaska right now, and people don't even know about it, where houses are literally washing away. I think my generation and I am just so much more aware of climate change and how it's affecting us, because with the digital age, we can just see it happening before our eyes.
Right, before our eyes. Yeah. I know my first moment was Greta Thunberg, actually. It really impacted me that it was a person of youth that was bringing this to our attention. And it made me think about my grandchildren, and it made me feel about what sort of future are we putting in their hands. So it was time to do something about it. And as we're all finding out right now, it is right here. It's here. Now is the time when we have to start making some changes, because the changes require time to sort of take effect, So it's not a problem for down the road. It's a problem to take care of right here and now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You are a new select board member. Where does climate sort of fit in terms of your sort of priority when you make decisions on things for the town?
So when I announced, and the Enterprise wrote an article, they quoted me as saying that climate will be a question that I ask in relation to every policy. And I think it's a framework rather than a priority, in the sense of that every decision I make, climate will be at the front of my mind. It could be as simple as, we're looking at building new fields, but coastal resiliency. There's a lot of things where I think climate needs to be thought of as, how does this help us achieve our climate goals? Does this abide by our climate goals? And then in addition to that, additional policies that we can adopt that are specifically related to climate change are incredibly important to me. But I also think that it's important to include it in our holistic approach to policy, that we're always thinking about climate and not just what is this climate change specific policy.
And where do you think we are, or maybe the body itself, the select board itself, and the town, in terms of placing climate sort of in that thought process?
I think the select board and the town, but the board in particular, places climate at an incredible importance to us. Colin Reed, who I was elected alongside, is community engagement officer down at Hui. And Heather Goldstone is a scientist by trade down at Woodwell, much more intelligent than I am on these issues. And I know Bob and Doug for sure also care about our environment. Doug has been here since he's been 3 years old, and knows our ponds and our lakes well, and Bob puts an importance on it too. So all of us care deeply about it. And I think the town has made a lot of recent commitments towards climate change that I've liked. Bringing in a coastal resilience officer is a great step that other towns I think are looking to follow. And Stephanie Madsen, our resiliency coordinator, is terrific too. So I think we have some great people around climate. And I think a lot of the shortcomings on climate are more related to federal and state headwinds than the town. I think the town is aware. We have some of the smartest scientists, not only in the Commonwealth, but in the world here in Falmouth. And I think that, I was at the celebration for the 300 committee back a couple months ago, and it's time for them to be renamed the 3000 Committee because they're approaching 3,000 acres saved. So
Excellent.
Falmouth really places an importance not only on climate but on restoration and preserving our nature too. So I think that as a community, the town and the select board is incredibly fortunate. We have some great climate stewards in our community that help us influence our policy.
Mm-hmm. Would I be speaking out of turn, though, if I said or asked the question, it still seems as if there's a lot of discourse within the community on certain things. For instance, we a couple weeks ago in the Enterprise, we had 2 climate-related articles with regards to the Cape Cod golf course and the solar farm and the South Coast Wind project. We're still kind of arguing over these things, and yet it's been pretty well proven that the direction we need to go in is renewables, further electrification. Why are we still?
Yeah, so on both of these, I'll take them issue by issue. On the solar farm, I actually voted against the transferring it over. And the reason I did so is because I wasn't a part of the select board the past couple of years where they entered this agreement. I personally believe that we're at a point where I don't think any piece of well-restored grass or land should be, a single tree should be cut down. That's the reason I voted against it. This is if the town doesn't want to purchase it, and I understand that, and the select board didn't want to go for that, this is the best possible use for this land. So I want to clarify that because I did vote against it, but I do support solar. I think it's just finding a balance between supporting renewable energy, supporting solar, and where it is. For me, we have so many parking lots in this town that are just empty. I think that's the perfect place to put solar. That is why I think some community members, and I've had really pro-climate community members actually speak against the project, simply because they just don't want to see a natural, well, it is a golf course, but a green space for recreation removed from the community. I don't think that one as much is a push against solar. But now that is the direction the town is taking, totally cool with it. I will support it in town meeting because that's the direction.
And I thought in that particular project, though, there were conditions that were set.
There is.
To make sure that there's still biodiversity.
Correct.
On the property.
There is still conservation on the property as well. Yes. So it is the best case scenario for this land. I personally wanted to purchase it and keep it recreation. On the wind front.
Are you a golfer?
I'm not actually. I'm really bad at golf, but I can acknowledge my right to shoot over par.
There you go.
But yeah, for the South Coast Wind Project, I think a lot of that, and you're going to get NIMBYism on anything, but wind in particular is one that folks really like to push against. The truth is that we live in the windiest place in the continental United States. Is off of Martha's Vineyard. And that is our natural resource. Massachusetts doesn't have natural gas. We can't just pipe in more natural gas, clearly because of the horrible things that leads, but it's also quite expensive. Our comparative advantage in our region is wind, and I think we need to, and I'm proud to say that, and I always say that, I think we need to pursue wind at every possible opportunity. It's also, I just find it interesting because it's something that's existed across Europe and Asia for decades.
That's where my thoughts were going as you were talking about it. It's like, it's not that it doesn't exist somewhere else.
Right.
And maybe initially there were some people that were like, well, that's my horizon and you're interrupting my horizon, the beauty of the horizon or something. But it's all over Europe.
Right.
It's all over Europe.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important piece, and if you want to talk about how do we drive energy costs down, it's creating more energy, but we need to balance creating more energy and creating new clean energy, and wind is the cleanest you're going to get. But I also think it's important that providers, with everything what happened with the blade failure in the summer, I think it's important that we look at what developers are on the hook for that, and that this is a failure of a corporation, not a failure of a greater thing.
Right.
Their process was bad. They used a junk blade, and they didn't communicate well in the process. And we need to hold the corporation accountable for their failures, but not the actual the overall goal in the project.
Right,
so, yeah, I'm a big supporter of wind. I think what the Trump administration is doing around wind is the exact opposite of what we need to be doing. I hope that the governor and her office will continue to support wind because it's like I said, it's our comparative advantage. You know, we live in one of the windiest places, the windiest place in the continent of the United States.
And Massachusetts has a pretty established clean energy program and goals set.
Right.
So that raises a question of if some of those goals were planned to be achievable with federal funds. Those federal funds are going away, either now or potentially. I'm not really sure where it is in that sort of like scenario. But so the responsibility then falls more on the states.
Yes.
And how are we going to, I guess, really take up that gap?
Yeah, I think that in any ways we can just ramp up what we're doing. There's a really good bill in the legislature right now that aims to increase taxes solely on corporations that are putting their money offshore in accounts in Belarus and in Cyprus, moving. So getting the fair share. It's called the Corporate Fair Share Bill. It copies the model of what was passed by ballot initiative in 2022, which allowed the state, it's an additional 1% tax, a 2% tax on the 1%. If you earned $1 million or more a year, your taxes increased by 2%. That generated billions of dollars in revenue, and right now transportation and education are one of the only areas in our state budget that is facing no headaches because of this small additional percentage of taxes on the richest earners in Massachusetts. So there's a bill to replicate that, but it's not indexed to anything. It's just to increase those taxes on corporations, this time not actually individual earners. So that would be one way that we could actually increase revenues to supplement the lost revenue and investment from the federal government. So using that to further our climate goals. Another one I think is worth looking at is our relationship with public companies or with private companies that do our utilities, because Eversource is a company that's traded on the NASDAQ. You know, it's ultimately they want to make profit. And the way they increased rates and people were complaining about energy costs this past winter is actually something that southern states did a lot of, where they made their utilities public and they've kept their bills low. It's very interesting. You know, some of the northern states have gone with this private partnership. Not all Eversource, but I think it's worth looking into if switching to publicly owned utilities. You know, to me, it's a public good, and I think we should do our best to. If we want people to switch to clean energy, we need to make sure it's you know, clean, affordable, and affordable. So I think it's worth looking into switching into publicly owned utilities across the Commonwealth.
And what's involved in that? Like,
I mean, that's not a
is
tomorrow
it a multi-year,
process.
I was going to say it's a multi-year process.
It's a multi-year process for sure. You know, I'm sure they probably have to be involved, and if Eversource like place land or stuff, you probably have to purchase it from them if you didn't already. But really just I feel like it would generate a lot of jobs if Massachusetts had to create and run its own energy company, essentially. And I think it'd be a good way to reduce costs in the long term, because that's what we've seen in the southern states, is those that stayed or switched to publicly owned utilities, their rates and their energy bills are a lot lower. Keeping in mind it is warmer down there, but even if you index it to reflect that, it's still cheaper.
So where do we know, or do we know, where Eversource and similar companies are in terms of transitioning from fossil fuels to renewables, like percentage-wise?
I'm not
that's
sure.
The other component. Obviously, in people's minds, the cost of home heating fuel, just to use that sort of general term, is on everybody's mind. But we also want to address the use of fossil fuels.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I will say that they have spent a lot lobbying the Trump administration to stay using fossil fuels. So my guess is that whatever they're allowed to is what they're going to try and spend towards fossil fuels. That's a base level knowledge guess. So I'm not quite sure on that one, on the specifics, but I think that would be another benefit of switching to publicly owned utilities, is that the state could then say, no, we are going to make this rapid transition, if possible, towards renewables.
So the ideal scenario and success would be if all the states would buy in. I can definitely see Massachusetts wanting to buy into something like this.
Sure.
A little less of a sell, or
Yeah.
a harder sell, I should say, for some other states.
Yeah,
to do
I
it.
think it makes a lot of sense for some of the coastal states where we have
Although we
great
have we have
wind,
Texas that has
great hydro.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. Like I said, it's been a lot of these southern states that are the ones that currently use public utilities. So it'd be interesting. You know, each area has different advantages in what they have and access to. But I think it could be something. You know, there's interesting. In West Virginia is finally trying to transition to using cleaner and newer energy and trying to build new industry around that because, you know, it was all about coal down there, and then it's decimated the entire state and their economy. So they're finally making that transition. I think of a state like that has been as reliant on fossil fuels as West Virginia is. I think that there's
a good sign.
room for optimism. Yeah, for sure.
Although we now are finding this problem between the fossil fuel industries are still getting subsidized, but the subsidies for the renewable industries are being taken away.
Yeah.
My feeling is like okay, if you don't want it, fine, but don't unlevel the playing field. Like, just keep a level playing field, and a good industry, a good business, a good company is going to rise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to rise if it's going to present, you know, a good
Yeah.
product.
Yeah, I think
It's
that
just an economic thing.
right. And I hope, you know, I mean, to be frank, the solution to that is you got to vote in the midterms. Is
Yes,
kind
you
of the
gotta vote.
solution to that one. But you know, I still think that there is that demand for renewable energy. People still want. There has been a massive spike in purchases of electric vehicles because a lot of those tax and credits are going to be pulled back soon. But still, people still want to buy them and take advantage of these rebates and buy these cars, and that's great.
And they're good cars.
They are good cars. And you know, in China and in other parts of the world, people are really transitioning to them a lot faster too. So the appetite is absolutely there. So I think if a company, you know, can hopefully provide cheaper without, you know, getting these rebates, if they can do that, I think that the consumer demand will still be there. So in the meantime, while the federal government is the federal government, hopefully somebody could step up and do that.
Electrification is the direction that we should be heading in, right? Whether it's fossil fueled or renewable energy. Where are we as a town heading in that direction, and where are we as a state heading in that direction?
Yeah, I'm not too privy on where the town is heading. I will say there are some cool projects on hydro energy.
In the town?
On the canal and around the canal. They're
okay.
very preliminary testing sites, but on how we can use currents, because the currents in the canal are incredibly strong, how we can use currents to generate hydroelectricity.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so really preliminary stuff, but really exciting projects. Yeah, the problem.
Maybe take the pressure off of wind a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, you know, fill gaps while we can.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're building. We'll see how town meeting votes, but solar is where the town's trying to go, and I think that's great. In any way we can create solar. You know, the one I always remember is Amsterdam has bike paths that are also can generate solar energy, and there's.
How do they do that?
I wish I was smart enough to tell you, but they can do that, and also when you there's some transfer of heat for when people actually use the path that it transfers in and generates energy. So really creative solutions like that. If there's any way in the future we could do that with our bike path, that would be really cool. So I think that while the funding scenarios are tough right now, the town wants to make these changes, and you know not only on this, but on, you know, different topic, but our internet access, I think, would be able to be a lot improved. We make these changes to our grid, because I don't know if you ever try to make a phone call in the Cape, but sometimes you just can't. So
That was my problem when I was traveling out west, but I
Yeah.
can't say that I've experienced it here.
Oh,
But
okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go through patches
Yeah.
where I have good reception, like radio reception or phone reception,
Yeah.
and then it just, for no reason, it just sort of like
Yeah,
goes
West
out.
West Falmouth in particular is really bad.
Yeah. And over by Central
Yeah,
is bad.
yeah.
Over there is
So.
bad. Yeah. So how do we bring this conversation? It sounds like our town administration is in good shape and on board with when they think about projects, they think about, how is that going to impact climate and impact our community. So, or maybe I don't have a good sense on this. Are people in the community thinking about climate when they think about, like, what am I going to do about my house, or what kind of car am I going to have, or sort of ways of reducing the use of fossil fuels and moving to something else? What's your sense?
I think so. But beyond that as well, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, by Alan Robinson, they had a cleanup day recently where people came in and they brought, I cannot remember what it was, whatever the solid waste program that was. People brought in their recyclables that they were able to done.
The textiles.
Yeah, the textiles. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And it was the biggest event they've ever had. So people do want to be more environmentally cautious and more environmentally sound. I remember when they made the outdoor classroom, is what they called it, at Mullen Hall. I was in 4th grade when they started doing that, where they taught us about composting.
Okay.
I don't know if they still do that program, but they're trying to integrate it.
Well, one of the schools, they have a whole composting program at, I think it's
I think all of them have it now, but it was actually part of the education process when I was in 4th grade. So we're actually, as a town, and just thanks to Superintendent Doer, we are doing that in our schools too, which I think is fantastic. So I think that in terms of what the town is offering, and we banned single-use plastic water bottles. Like, I think that what the town is doing, people are doing. In terms of how can we get people to lean towards purchasing different, transitioning away from fossil fuels, I think that has to be a more holistic approach. I'm not sure if the actual town that's their role at this time.
I guess maybe what I'm thinking of along these lines, though, is this major resistance that we have to offshore wind and solar farms. It seems like there has to be this tension between two separate parties, as opposed to looking at it as this is an issue that affects all of us, and why can't we talk about it together and come up with solutions together?
You can disagree if you would like, but I think we've moved the needle a little bit on it, particularly on solar. I think there's less pushback on solar. I just think this one particular project that we're talking about, because of its relationship with getting rid of open and recreational space, I think that's where there's headaches. But I think people are a fan of solar still. I've seen in my people in the public reach out to me on any number of issues, and they say, we like solar, we just didn't like this project. So it's not, people aren't saying now, compared to the past, I've definitely noticed, people are saying, oh no, I like solar, I just don't like this solar. Which is, that is not in my backyard to its definition, but I resonate with them on this one. But I think it's also important to look at, sometimes people just aren't vocal. And a lot of times with people in public offices and as public officials, public employees, they get afraid of the loud people, but it's really got to think about what does the majority want, and I'm confident that in this town the majority wants cleaner energy and steps to go in that direction. So I'm fine with having those difficult conversations with people. It's like, look, if we want to meet our energy goals, if you want your house not to be underwater in 20 years, then we need to pursue these things. And also, a lot of these times, these are quality of life improvements. We can transition to solar, we can make energy cheaper, we can make more solar. Offshore wind would, I don't even want to call it an eyesore. I think they're quite interesting things.
Yeah.
But you don't put them, they're going to be pretty far out there. So.
And after a while, you probably wouldn't even see. You'd see them, but it wouldn't register with you as something foreign.
As long as it doesn't affect people, as long as folks aren't hearing it super, which they wouldn't if they're that far out, then I really don't see the issue with it. So, I think it's important to kind of push back on. And just have a conversation with people. I think that's one thing is people get kind of shut away.
Keep the conversation.
Yeah, going. Because I think these are we are a coastal peninsula. We are the one of the first areas that will be continues to be impacted by climate change, and it's important to there is really stressing there is no alternative. We're out of time to just not do these things.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that. But I will again emphasize, I think we have improved since, I was younger on these issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because sometimes when you're in the mix of presenting the problem and talking about the problem, you sort of forget the advances that are happening.
Yeah.
I know even when I first started in this sort of arena of climate advocacy, I thought we were going to like fix everything, like it was possible to fix everything. And over time, I've come to realize that we are fixing things, we are making things better. There's more to do, but there's things that we also maybe aren't going to change.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other thing with climate issues is a lot of them are changing as they're coming, and we don't know. It's not like housing. Like housing, I mean, at least the way I feel is we know what the issue is with housing, and we really know how to fix it. We need to bring costs down. Climate is new, and it's evolving and changing every day, and the solutions evolve and change every day. You know, there's some cool things that they're doing on Martha's Vineyard with using oysters to fight off coastal erosion, and they just did a really cool project. I can't remember what town on the vineyard, but they actually were able to. They've noticed that things are growing back, and its erosion level is like completely dropped off.
Really?
By
I want to know
building
more
oysters.
about this.
Yeah, it was in the Vineyard Times and the Gazette. So we live in this area where we have all these innovating solutions that are, may seem insignificant, and then we have a breakthrough, and something like that, you won't even notice that. So that's why I think is the thing that's different with climate compared to other issues.
Yeah, and so the message is probably should be more about these innovations and these advances that are happening, as opposed to the doom and gloom part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hope is important on any issue. But also, again, emphasizing to folks that these are quality of life changes a lot of the times. Like, this is not only should we be pursuing new energy sources because we have to, but because that they are better and they are.
The air is cleaner.
The air is cleaner.
Yeah.
Your energy will be cheaper, quicker, less grid blackouts in the winter and the summer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know a lot on this particular topic, but so. As we move more and more towards more electricity, how do we back it up? We're talking about an area here on Cape Cod in Falmouth where we do have our storms from time to time, and we do have our power outages. So I think that's like one of people's concerns about going to electricity is, what happens when
I'm very interested. The governor recently released an energy bill for proposal and for comment. I'm very interested in the role in what small nuclear modular reactors have in things.
Okay.
Nuclear is an incredibly clean energy until you're done with it, is its problem. Then you have issues with storing it. Holtec, they've been in a decommissioning process for a long time. So I'm very interested in how that develops. One as a policy, but as the industry develops, these small modular reactors are supposed to be much cleaner, last way longer, and it's the way that you can store them apparently is a lot better. So I think that would be something that is incredibly interesting. And this is another example of this is innovating right in front of us. But I think that could be an answer to that, where if you have a couple of those, perhaps, then you can really power the grid if needed.
What about, I'm getting back to the hydroelectric component of it.
That would be great.
It seems like the currents would continue to go through even with the power outage,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
So, could that be sort of like the town's backup or something?
That's what they do a lot in Canada. We get a lot of our energy comes from Hydro-Quebec, and that's something they do over there. So if anyway we can build that here, and I'm not sure, I'll have to talk with the folks who are working on that project in Buzzards Bay. But the more we can do that, the better. And that's the advantage we have being on Cape Cod and in Falmouth is the climate leaders that they're actually here in Falmouth and on the Cape who are trying to solve this problem.
So I'm going to segue a little bit to, with climate change comes flooding, sea level rise. Flooding is probably one of the number one issues. We've seen an impact on flood insurance rates. Communities, even here on the Cape, are approaching insurance rates that are becoming cost prohibitive. Some people are even having to opt out of having insurance at all. My limited understanding is that FEMA has a program, it's the Regional Community Flood Rating System, which can offer discounts.
Yes.
And is that to, like, as a community as a whole, individuals How does that
Yeah,
work?
I'm not
Do we have it?
super familiar with it, but I know. So I ran Representative Moakley's campaign, and I knew it was an issue on the islands because they kind of they did was, or what companies were doing based on this was they would just do a blanket rate for the island. That doesn't make sense if you have a house right on the edge of a cliff versus if you have a house, in the middle of Tisbury. You're not really near the water, so. That can be an issue where we believe that some of these corporations that provide insurance are kind of trying to say that, if you live in Hatchville, your flood insurance shouldn't be the same as someone who lives at the bottom of Woods Hole.
Right.
So that is one concern I have. Well, one thing that's been interesting in the conversation of insurance is I don't think the state should be on the hook for some of these summer homes that are right on the edge of the water. I think, homes purchased in the last 10 to 15 years, if you bought a house right on the water, I think you're signing up for. I don't think the taxpayers in Massachusetts should bail out summer residents who are buying homes right on the edge of the water. I think at this point you know the risks when you're purchasing that. But I think it is important for the working people who live here in Falmouth that their insurance rates are kept as low as possible, and that this is why I wish our form of government we could lower. I wish the state had more control on price gouging of corporations, and then they could actually say no, this is too high. Because I think there are examples of these companies that are taking advantage of
And how do
people.
they get more control?
I mean, legislation where you can say, "Hey, this
There's
is
that
the rate."
vote again.
Yeah. Well, this
Go
would be
get the
state. Well,
people.
this would be state legislation. So this is something that the governor could do, or you could just say, "No, this is the rate." People shouldn't pay more than whatever per capita on flood insurance because there are people who have lived in Falmouth for families who've had houses for a century, for a long, long time, and they're because of climate change, their houses should be at risk. I just don't want that person's rate to be treated the same as I talked to someone who he had to sell his mother's house, passed away, sold it to a hedge fund manager in Singapore. I don't think that hedge fund manager in Singapore should pay the same rate as someone whose family has been in Falmouth for 3 generations.
Yeah, makes sense. Somewhat related to that is we recently had a feasibility study done for Surf Drive, which is a big issue as far as flooding goes, as far as the one of the first places that kind of receives the storms that we get, right? And we got some important information from that study and some hard information to hear. Where do we go from here with that information?
Yeah, and I think that is, you're 100% right, where this is hard information to hear, but the less we act, the more hard things we're going to hear. The conclusion of that study is you could build a 50-foot wall and you're not going to save Surf Drive. At least that's how I took it. And I think that it is important. I think that, I've had conversations with Barb Schneider and the Beach Committee came before us, and they gave a presentation of they want to transition away from, one, they want to move out of the beach department building that is on Surf Drive, and transition to having mobile bathrooms and mobile services there. So food trucks instead of that brick and mortar restaurant that's there. So on all of our town-owned parcels on Surf Drive, moving away.
Moving away or making them portable. So that they can
portable.
Be moved
Yes,
away
I think food trucks is a terrific idea, a big plus to the Beach Committee. Where there's studies on talking about Pumping Station Road and other places to move the Beach Committee. So they are actively pursuing, or the Beach Department, they're actively considering, no, the Beach Department needs to be somewhere else. So that's step one in terms of what's the town property there. Get that off there.
And leading by example, really.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I mean. Back to your first question, one of your first questions of where is climate change my priority? I think that's an example of this is one committee that's thinking that way. Every committee, it's going to be more relevant to some, but needs to think of how does climate change and the town's climate goals fit into what our committee is doing. The other one, so that study came up with a couple of solutions. And I think that's one that the select board is going to have to discuss. But I'm incredibly grateful to the Woods Hole group and the scientists and that was one of the public forums where the public really attended and was really invested in it, and I really appreciate that in Falmouth. So that's going to be one I think we'll come up with, in the near future. We'll talk about as on the board. Knock on wood, we haven't had any really bad storms in a while. We got lucky last weekend. But I believe that whatever we can do to preserve the most amount possible beyond Surf Drive, I think is important. And if that means
You're talking about the infrastructure from Surf Drive towards town. Is that what you're talking about?
I guess more in the long term, folks' homes. If we have to lose parts of that road, this talks about one way. This talks about get rid of it and do make the sand. You really can't do beach restoration as much there. You need to building a barrier is not necessarily the best thing to do. So any way that we can preserve Surf Drive in the short term without jeopardizing the future of, start going down Mill Road and Walker Street and Shore Street, whatever we can do to keep those people safe while still preserving our way of life in the short term. But I am going to be open to any solution, I think. I don't think there's anything I'd say no at this point.
Yeah. And it's such an iconic roadway. It's hard for
I know.
people to give it up. Well, it's iconic, but it's also, there's only
It's a revenue driver for the town, too. In terms of the beaches, but also the road races. We have one of the biggest road races in the country, and right down
right
Surf
along
Drive.
there.
The bike Tour de Falmouth that happened.
Well, it wouldn't be
weekends
the
ago.
same, but you could reroute
You could
that
still
marathon.
do it. Yeah, no, we're going to keep the marathon. But in terms of, I think what you're getting to is one of the only access points back there.
Yeah. Back there, and also getting from Woods Hole to Falmouth.
Correct.
Well, there's just.
I would hate to drive down Woods Hole Road in the summer. So, yeah, I think that's going to be an important part of the conversation when we get there. And I think this is a conversation that we will have, and that'll happen in the near future.
You do think, or you don't?
I think we will.
Also, many conversations with regards to the people that are going to be impacted by whatever.
It's
gets
my
done there.
understanding that that's already happening too. Is that they are talking with property owners.
Yeah. That has begun.
So I think that's great.
Yeah. But sort of keeping those people that are going to be impacted in the conversation throughout the entire process.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've kind of hurt some of the discussions that have been made in towns because we do have public meetings, but maybe not enough public meetings and not enough conversation about things.
Yeah, and
have them be part of the solution.
That's a priority of mine. Blanket in every issue in the town is I think the town can do, a lot better job with its communication with the public on a number of issues. I want to renovate the website. I think our website's outdated. I want to improve whether it be more mailed notices, encouraging people to sign up more for our mailing list, or literally like paying to promote the town's website when people are Googling, like, where do I do this, blah, blah, blah. I think the town should actually make that investment so that people can actually see where to go. Because I think people are missing information a lot, because the town, to its credit, it does post public information hearings, it does post all these things, it posts to Facebook, but people aren't seeing it.
You
for
don't
whatever
always
reasons.
know, one, that it's happening, and then if you don't know that it's happening, you don't know, you can't find out about it.
Exactly. So I think it's really, I served 1 year in the housing authority, and the one thing I really pushed for was the website was crap, and I wanted to get rid of it and make a new one where tenants could pay their rent online, submit complaints, and do everything, and they did that. So that's going to be my priority on the select board as well as to push for that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. What other initiatives are you interested in, want to be involved in, want to make a difference in?
Housing right now is for sure my biggest one, but I think climate plays into that where, I've been really pushing for adopting a residential exemption so we can raise taxes on the summer folks while not changing tax rates or actually lowering taxes for the working people who live here in Falmouth. That could also lead to a senior exemption where seniors would pay less in property taxes here in Falmouth too. I want to do that because the level of wealth we've seen that has entered town since the pandemic, really, where people from out of state have come in and bought second and third homes, and then they either rent them out or they just don't even see them. Because if we are going to protect our resources, and this is one I should have given the town credit to, the transition we're doing to sewering, I think, is fantastic, and the more we can do that is great. And I forgot to give them Amy Lowell and the team there credit for that. But if we want to, the point being is that we don't have a housing problem in terms of stock, in my opinion, but in terms of what is our occupancy rate, is we have too many empty homes here. So I want to tax these people at a higher rate, so they're paying their fair share, so we can, purchase and deed restrict houses to make them rebuild existing properties into housing, make multi-unit housing. In my day job, I work for State Senator Dylan Fernandez, and the other day I attended the opening of the Henry T. Wing School in Sandwich. It was a school in Sandwich for 100 years. It's been turned into, I think it's going to be, by the end of the project, it's going to be like 60 or 80 units of housing for seniors and people who work in around the town in Sandwich. But they preserved the character of the school. So like there's a public use, the public can go and use it. What used to be the auditorium is now like essentially like a meeting space for the town of Sandwich. So really creative solutions like that. There's discussions on what are we going to do with the school administration building or Morse Pond, because we are seeing declining school opportunities, school enrollment, where we can turn that into housing, because I don't want to tear down a bunch of trees and build housing, because that is going to deplete our water supply, that is going to deplete our nature, and that's what people love about Falmouth and about Cape Cod. So for me, deed restrictions and supporting, the select board, I was really happy, unanimous vote to support Michael Galasso's project in the Royal Nursing Home.
Wonderful.
There's going to be a lot of workforce housing, I think it's over like 60% of the units in there are going to be affordable rate. So those are things that we're doing now that I think are really important on housing. And also I spoke before the Assembly of Delegates. Falmouth's delegate Dan Gesson has been a leader on the real estate transfer fee. And me and member Doug Brown spoke to it a couple weeks ago. And it's just like,
How
look.
are things going with that? Where's that?
Yeah, so the Assembly doesn't have the final draft yet of what they're voting on. They're still working through it, because there's questions of whether is this going to be a county administered fee, is this going to go to a towns? The way I understand it, based on conversations that I've had recently, is towns will be able to opt in or opt out to it at the select board level if they want to participate in the real estate transfer fee.
So how does that work? I mean, I can't imagine a town, well.
There are towns, I'll say this, Falmouth will opt in. Falmouth
will?
Yeah, I feel very confident in that. There are towns on Cape, I think, that won't, but what it is for the folks who don't know, is a small percentage tax on home sales. The current proposal is home sales over $2 million, a 2% tax to go towards affordable housing. What they're looking at doing, and towns would also have a say in this, is for every additional million, can you change the percentage? So a $2 million home sold in Dennis shouldn't be treated the same as some of these $15 million homes in Nantucket. If you can tax those homes in Nantucket a lot more, I think that would be fantastic. So the question is just whether or not the money
A more prorated
correct
type of
and that
taxation.
that's one of the questions. The other question is that money all pooled to the county, or is it by town? So does that sale, the tax coming from the sale to Nantucket, is that going back to Nantucket, or is it going to a county? So those are what's being figured out. I just know that I think this is a great policy and a great idea, and whatever way it happens, it needs to happen, because it is an incredibly difficult time for working people and for our seniors right now, and increasing taxes on them, to me, is not something we should be doing. So taking advantage of the rich who are buying up these homes is important to me.
And yet I almost feel as if our population is sort of like moving towards more wealthy people here. So, and they're going to be the ones that are going to object, are the ones that object to this.
The thing is, though, is a lot of them actually don't live and vote here. A lot of them these are summer residents who own these homes.
Okay.
They can't. I mean, they can object with their wallets if they want to lobby against it, but at the end of the day, I answer the people who live and work in Falmouth, and I'm going to always protect their interests and promote solutions that will benefit them.
I think maybe another place where people might be coming from is because we're a resort destination. I don't agree.
Sure.
I agree that this is a place where people live and work and raise their families. But as we become maybe more and more as a resort destination, that population of people obviously is getting much, much smaller, and the people that are only here some of the time or just buy for investment purposes are sort of dwarfing all of that. And yet not ready to participate into the financial stability of the
Look,
area.
if you are purchasing property here and you're making significant investment here, I think you have an obligation to support the locals who live and work here.
Yeah.
So that, I think that might
They're
not
the
be
ones
popular,
that they're the
but
people that are providing you your health care with doctors and nurses that are here,
Yeah.
your fire, your police.
yeah, I
your
just think that what you
service.
used to see on the Cape would be, teachers from New York would have second houses here from across the country. They come for 3 months, they spend their money here, and they would be here. What you're seeing now is a very different kind of person is buying a second house here. I'm not, if you come here for a weekend, great, enjoy it. I'm not saying we should be attacking those people. They're incredibly important to our economy. But I'm saying people who are buying second and third homes here, either to rent them out as Airbnbs and it is solely an investment thing, I am totally against that, 100%. But people who are just buying these houses and leaving them vacant, if you're going to leave it vacant, I think you should be taxed at a higher rate. And I think that these transactions should be higher. We should get a percentage of that transaction. I think at a time that would be
Sounds good to me.
unpopular to say, but I actually, I haven't received as much pushback as I thought on that one, And this is what it goes back to your earlier thing, is like, we need to have difficult conversations with people we don't always agree with and promote these new ideas. Because if we just assume that someone's going to be a no on solar or someone's going to be a no on wind, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
And that's how I feel about housing too.
So Jack, with the changes that are happening on the federal level with regards to funding being taken away from not just climate things, but climate things or projects, it seems as if it's making the towns a bit more vulnerable when we do have these climate-related disasters that happen to our area. So what do you think about the idea of creating a fund for the town of Falmouth? It's something that would probably take a while to develop because the costs are very expensive. Do you think that's a good something that we should start thinking about now?
Yes. Plymouth did this on a similar issue over a decade ago. Former Select Board member in Plymouth, John Mahoney, proposed a small increase in Plymouth property taxes that was indexed specifically to a fund that would be used eventually for when Holtec was ready to go offline, so that the town of Plymouth could purchase a portion of the site. That fund is now worth over $10 million, and it only costs the taxpayers of Plymouth, I believe, like an extra $5, like every not even every year. It was like an incredibly small amount of money, and now it's over $10 million. So they can use that to purchase a piece of the land and do stuff with it. So I am a big fan always of, if it is just a very minuscule amount, when we think about taxes, too much people think about, well, what is the percent year over the year? For me, it's, well, what is this tax achieving? What are we doing with it? So we can increase property taxes by a minuscule amount, or just a percentage of a fund, whatever other tax, whatever mechanism it needs to be, to make a climate fund like that, to fund projects, whether it be grants that the town could give out to people, or whether it be something that the town could then use for its own projects. I think that would be a fantastic use of funds, and I think people would buy into it, and to make it fair, I think if you put that to a ballot initiative, I think that'd be awesome. If in the Maytown election, if one day town meeting approved that, for it to go towards the ballot and people could vote on whether or not could be small. We talk about the specifics of it, but I think that is a really innovative solution, and I think that what's happened in Plymouth has shown that for just a small amount more in taxes on the individual every year, they've really going to be offered great opportunity with this new land that they're going to be able to acquire. So, big fan.
And maybe even prorated a little bit along the lines of what you were saying before.
Yeah.
The people that are, the people who live in this community wouldn't have to pay as much of an increase
Exactly.
as people who
I'm
are.
a big fan of that, of progressive taxation like that, in any chance of, if I don't think the person who makes $50,000 a year, lives in Falmouth year round, should pay the same as the person bringing in over $1 million a year who's not here all the time. So, and that's one thing as well. We talked about the residential exemption. That is one thing, is we were looking about the way Mashpee did it. So Mashpee recently did this, where they adopted it so that they can attack, because they have a lot of summer residents too, the New Seabury area. Theirs goes towards funds to clean their water supply and to keep their waters clean. So they index it to that. So to the extent that our select board could index it to maybe climate and housing, a mix of both, I think.
And I
would
think
be
also
a good step.
send the message that it's not a punitive thing, because these are funds that are going to go towards correcting whatever damages are done as a result of the climate change.
Yeah.
Like that's something that would benefit everybody because it maintains or will help to maintain property values.
And it's
across
important
the
to put your
board.
money where your mouth is, on climate issues.
Yeah.
And you're right. It would, only, again, these are all things that are going. It's not like we're sending your money to foreign aid or something, or going somewhere else. Like this is
Going into this town.
This is going right back into the town. So I'm a big fan of that proposal.
All right. Thank you very much
There we
for
go.
that. Do you have any office times where people can come and talk with you about things? Or
I
do you,
I don't have like a set time, but I do have a website. It's jackprichardson.com, and you can contact me there, and I'm happy to get coffee. Meet anyone at Coffee Daily Brew, anytime to discuss anything they'd like. So it's jackprichardson.com, and you can reach me there. My information's all there, issues, all that. So I'm happy to discuss anything at any time with anyone.
okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jack, I want to thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank you
being
for
here
having me.
today.
Really enjoyed
I know
the
I
discussion.
learned a lot of things that I didn't know, and have some really encouraging ideas, and also a better sense of we're heading in a good direction.
Yeah,
And-
I think the town is doing a lot on climate, and I'm really honored to serve the people of Falmouth who step up and give a lot of ideas on climate, and it's an honor to give back to the community I love.
Well, it shows that you love this community, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So for those of you who joined us today, thank you as well. You heard it. If you want to talk to Jack about anything that we discussed today or anything else, we'll put that up on our on the recording, and go out there and have yourself a conversation with someone else today. Okay? Thanks for joining us.